decades, the U.S. has been a leading force in naval warfare with their next-generation aircraft carriers, warships, and submarines. But with competition from rival countries, the U.S. Navy has reached a major milestone and has raised the bar on how effective future submarines must be. The new U.S. submarine boasts unrivaled speed and power and can effortlessly destroy a continent. How does the groundbreaking capability of the new U.S. submarine reshape the global dynamics of military competition? What else is this submarine capable of? Join us as we explore the new U.S. submarine that can destroy a continent in 30 minutes. The development of submarines in the United States began during the American Revolution when an inventor named David Bushnell made the Turtle, a hand-cranked underwater boat used for secret missions against British ships. Then, in the Civil War, the Union tried out submarines like the USS Alligator and USS Intelligentsia, but these submarines made little impact. The real progress happened in the late 1980s, when the USS Holland, the first official U.S. Navy submarine, was created. John Philip Holland designed this submarine, which brought important changes like a gas-powered engine and an electric motor for going underwater. In the early 1900s, after the successful use of submarines in World War I, the U.S. Navy introduced new classes of submarines like E, F, and G submarines. And by World War II, submarines had become a crucial part of naval plans, especially with the development of fleet submarines like the Gado and Balao classes. A major moment in submarine history happened in 1955, when the USS Nautilus became the world's first nuclear-powered submarine. This new upgrade gave submarines almost unlimited time underwater and higher speeds. The Nautilus' success led to more nuclear-powered submarines like the USS Skipjack and USS Thresher classes. In the 1980s, the U.S. Navy introduced powerful submarines called boomers. The scariest ones are the 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines, carrying half of the U.S.'s nuclear weapons. Despite the collapse of the Soviet Union, the U.S.'s main enemy over 30 years ago, not much has changed. The U.S. still relies on the same 14 Ohio-class submarines. About 170 meters long, each submarine can carry 24 Trident II submarine-launched ballistic missiles. These missiles, launched underwater, can hit targets over 7,000 miles away. When a Trident II re-enters the atmosphere at super high speeds, it splits into up to 8 parts, each carrying a nuclear warhead. In simple terms, a full salvo from one Ohio-class submarine, fired in less than a minute, could release up to 192 nuclear warheads, enough to destroy 24 cities. The main rival to the Ohio-class submarine is Russia's last Typhoon-class submarine, which is even bigger and has 20 missile launch tubes. China, Russia, India, England, and France all have submarines with missiles, and just a few of them could destroy big cities in a developed country. So why do we have these massive weapons that could destroy entire nations? It's all about nuclear deterrence. If a country attacks first, it could wipe out land-based missiles and bombers, but finding a submarine quietly moving in the deep sea is tough. It's unlikely to take them all out in one attack. So these submarines become a way to strike back with nuclear weapons, making any sensible enemy think twice about attacking or using nuclear weapons at all. At least, that's the idea. The Ohio-class submarines with Trident missiles will be successful if they never have to use their weapons in a real attack. They started service in the 1980s, replacing 5 other classes of submarines known as the 41 for Freedom. These submarines are huge, weighing more than 18,000 tons underwater, and are the 3rd largest ever built for the U.S. Navy. Each one, except the Henry M. Jackson, is named after a U.S. state, a tradition that used to be reserved for big surface warships. A boomer submarine will probably get its orders through low-frequency radio if there's a nuclear war. Even though the submarine's missiles aren't aimed beforehand, they can quickly be given specific coordinates. The first 8 Ohio-class submarines were made to launch Trident I C4 missiles, but now they all carry the better Trident II D5 missiles, which have a 50% longer range and can hit targets very precisely. This means they could target enemy military bases as a first-strike weapon. These submarines also have torpedoes for self-defense, but their main job isn't to attack other ships. Instead, they try to stay hidden and quiet to avoid being tracked. The submarine's nuclear reactor lets it stay underwater for a long time and move quietly at 20 knots. While other parts of the military might respond to a crisis, nuclear submarines keep to a regular schedule of patrols and don't communicate much to stay hidden. Each Ohio-class submarine has 2 crews, Gold and Blue, with 154 people. They take turns going on patrols that last around 70 to 90 days underwater, with the longest on record being 140 days by the USS Pennsylvania. They spend about a month between patrols, getting supplies through 3 big hatches. There are 9 boomers in Bangor, Washington, patrolling the Pacific Ocean, and 5 in Kings Bay, Georgia, for operations in the Atlantic. The U.S. reduced its nuclear forces after the Cold War and the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. Instead of retiring some of the oldest boats, the Navy upgraded 4 of the 18 Ohio-class subs to carry cruise missiles for conventional attacks on land and sea, starting with the USS Ohio. The New START Treaty, active since 2011, sets limits on deployed nuclear weapons. The plan is to keep 12 Ohio-class subs active at a time, each with 20 Trident II missiles, while 2 are in overhaul. This keeps 240 missiles active with 1,090 warheads, enough to cause significant destruction. The Ohio-class subs will continue until the late 2020s and might get upgrades for quieter operation. They'll eventually be replaced by a new class called the Columbia class, expected to cost between $4 and $6 billion each. These new boomers may be fewer in number, using reactors that don't need expensive overhauls, and they could serve until 2085. In 1999, the U.S. Navy began making Virginia-class submarines to support the Ohio class. The first one, SSN 774 Virginia, started service in 2004. The Navy got 21 submarines from 4 series in the last 19 years. The newest, SSN 794 Montana, was given to the Navy in June 2022. 3 more are being tested and 3 are being built. They plan to have 48 submarines in total, with 34 already ordered and set to be ready by 2030. These will replace the older Los Angeles and improved Los Angeles submarines from the 1970s and 1970s. Virginia is a simpler version of Seawolf submarines. The first Seawolf was given to the military in 1999. Seawolves were made to find and destroy Soviet nuclear submarines with nuclear missiles. They were quiet in the ocean but expensive, costing $4.3 billion each. Only 3 were built because politicians thought the Soviet Union was no longer a threat. So, Virginia, a more affordable version, was created. Its purpose is the same: to destroy Russian nuclear submarines. The first Virginia series, Block 1, has 12 vertical launchers and 4 torpedo tubes for Harpoon anti-ship missiles, Mk-48 torpedoes, or mines. It weighs 7,800 tons on the surface and 7,925 tons underwater. It's 114.9 meters long and 10.5 meters wide. Its maximum speed underwater is 35 knots, and it can dive up to 244 meters. The maximum diving depth is 500 meters. It has an S9G nuclear reactor with a thermal capacity of 210 megawatts. The reactor can work for 33 years without refueling, which is the whole life of the ship, from building to retiring, a unique feature in the world. The second type of ships with nuclear reactors that don't need recharging during operation are the aircraft carriers of the Gerald R. Ford class. The Virginia submarine usually has a crew of 100 to 120, depending on the tasks it has to do. It costs $2.5 billion, and it's been upgraded a few times. There are 4 series of Virginias in service now: Block 1, Block 2, Block 3, and Block 4. The price for the first two Block 3 submarines dropped to $1.8 billion. One big change is that instead of 12 vertical Tomahawk launchers, the Block 3 and Block 4 submarines have two revolver-type launchers with Tomahawks each. The number of cruise missiles they can launch has stayed the same, but the cost for each Block 3 submarine, except the first two and all Block 4 submarines, has gone up to $2.7 billion. The U.S. has been working on the next upgrade, called Block 5, since 2017. The new submarine will be more than 2 tons bigger, and the hull will be 21 meters longer. This extra space is needed for new launchers for Tomahawks, so the total number of missiles they can launch will be 40, which is more than 3 times the current capacity. The big increase in firepower is impressive, but it's not a surprise. But the U.S. Navy wants $5.1 billion for the first Block 5 submarine in 2024. That's almost double the cost of one Block 4 submarine. That's almost $1 billion more than the Seawolf submarine. The last Seawolf submarine, the SSN-23 Jimmy Carter, can dive to 610 meters, while Virginia's specs are 244 meters. The Seawolf can carry up to 50 Tomahawk or Harpoon missiles, which is 10 more than Block 5 and costs about $800 million less. What's the secret? What's the mystery? You will have to find a different answer. It's a strict secret. For example, SSN-23 Jimmy Carter has been in the U.S. Navy for 18 years, but its details are still classified. But information on the respected website, 1045, reveals the mystery. It's all about an extra section, about 70 feet long, with 4 Virginia payload modules. Each module has 7 vertical launchers for Tomahawk Block 4 and Block 5 cruise missiles. That's a total of 28 Tomahawks. Additionally, forward vertical launchers with 6 missiles each, as planned in previous designs, will also be there. So it adds up to 40 missiles, as we mentioned before. The Tomahawk Block 4, used since 2004, can be redirected to 15 targets using satellites. Block 5 is still in development and will have 2 versions. Block 5A is a modified version with an MST homing head, bringing back the anti-ship Tomahawk used in the past but stopped in the mid-90s. The Tomahawk Block 5B, another version, will have a more powerful JMUS warhead and can target various things, including protected ground targets. If the new Virginia submarines have both Tomahawk versions, they can now attack land targets and surface ships. The crucial part is that the VPM units can be changed to use advanced weapons. What kind of weapons? Hypersonic missiles, of course. Specifically, the IRCPS hypersonic ballistic missile with a CHGB hypersonic warhead. It will have a range of 500 to 1,000 kilometers and a speed of up to Mach 8 or 10,000 kilometers per hour. The missile is expected to be ready by 2028 and will be used on submarines and Zumwalt-class destroyers. The warhead on the ship's missile will be the same as on the hypersonic air-launched AGM-183A missile. In the late 2019, a contract worth $22 billion was given to the U.S. Navy, requiring them to get 10 next-generation submarines by 2029. The Electric Boat Shipyard in Groton, Connecticut, held a keel-laying ceremony on December 7, 2022, for the first Virginia Block 5 SSN 803 series Arizona, which will have VPM units. But this isn't the end of the Virginia nuclear submarine program. They're already planning more upgrades, following the recent pattern of improving the existing design. In 2008, the U.S. Navy started developing a new generation submarine called the Columbia. Until recently, progress was slow, but Russia's latest fourth-generation Bore missile submarines made the U.S. rethink its defense strategy. Now their military and financial plans are focused on upgrading their nuclear arsenals, and building 12 strategic missile-carrying submarines of the Columbia type is a top priority for the U.S. presidential administration. Let's compare the Columbia submarine with the Bore submarine. So, what do we know about the American Columbia submarine? It'll be over 560 feet long and have a maximum width of 43 feet. It can accommodate a crew of 155. The displacement will be almost 21,000 tons. The submarine will have a nuclear reactor, providing unlimited range and a speed of 30 knots. Unlike the previous generation, the Columbia's reactor doesn't need refueling throughout its lifetime. The nuclear plant's generators will use the engine to reduce noise. The propeller will be replaced by a water jet propulsor, similar to what is done on the Virginia-class attack submarine, actively replacing the outdated Los Angeles boats in the U.S. Navy. The General Dynamics Corporation, a military-industrial company, is working on the technical design of the Columbia submarine. These submarines will be built at General Dynamics Electric Boat and Newport News shipbuilding yards in Connecticut. You might wonder how these new submarines will differ from the old Ohio ones. In simpler terms, what are taxpayers $130 billion paying for in the 12 Columbia submarine construction programs? The first ship will cost $15 billion, including $4 billion for design. The following ships will cost $6 billion each. Just a year ago, the total cost was estimated at $109.8 billion, which has increased by almost a third. The main features that make the Columbia submarines stand out from the aging Ohio submarines include an increased service life of up to 42 years, with new and more reliable hull constructions, no need for core reloading during the reactor's entire lifetime, leading to much shorter repair times, modernized weaponry and technical systems to improve stealth and survivability, including water jet propulsors and a new propulsion motor, new soundproofing methods, upgraded torpedo and radio weaponry, and new ship and weaponry control systems. The submarines can also be equipped with a submarine warfare system called SWIFTs, which combines sonar, optical surveillance, and weapons control. Lastly, they will have advanced ballistic missiles with increased range and accuracy. While there is no specific information about these missiles, it's assumed they will initially use the same missiles as Ohio. However, these missiles from 1990 are considered to be just as effective as the Russian Bulava missiles adopted in 2013, which are used on the Borei submarines. The first Columbia-class submarine is set to be built and commissioned from 2021 to 2031, and the full series of 12 missile carriers should be finished by 2042. If everything goes according to plan, these submarines can be used until 2084. Now let's compare the technical details of the Colorado and the Russian Borei-class submarines. Keep in mind that the Russian submarines are already actively being built. Out of the planned 12, 6 have been built and 5 are in service. Even though technical information on Boris and Columbia-class ships is limited due to high secrecy, we have enough for a brief comparison. The external dimensions of the ships are similar. The overall length is between 170 and 171 meters, and the maximum diameter of the cylindrical part is between 43 and 44 feet. The Russian cruiser has a displacement above the water of 14.7 and a total underwater displacement of 24,000 tons. For Columbia, these figures are 18,300 and 23,100 tons, respectively. The difference is because of the architectural choices. Russians use a traditional double-hull design with an outer and solid interhull, while Americans prefer a single solid hull. The working depth and maximum speed are close, around 1,300 feet and 30 knots, respectively. The crew size is different, with 107 for the Russian submarines and 155 for the Columbia, indicating that the Russian submarines are significantly more automated. Both types of submarines have the same number of launching shafts, which is 16. The primary missile for the Borei-class submarines is the R-30 Bulava, a solid-fuel ballistic missile with 6 special guided warheads. It weighs 37 tons and has a range of over 9,000 kilometers. In 2011, during a test program, the Borei project's mothership, Yuri Dolgoruki, launched a Bulava missile covering a distance of 5,800 miles. As for the Columbia boats, the new missile they will use has yet to be discovered. For comparison, let's look at the missile the Ohio boats use, the Trident II-D5. It's 13.6 meters long and weighs 59 tons. It can carry 8 to 12 deployable warheads, but a maximum of 6 is allowed due to strategic arms reduction agreements. The exact range is classified, but it's quoted as 4,870 miles for maximum payload and 7,500 miles for reduced takeoff weight. Overall, the Trident seems like a more powerful weapon, so the new missile for Columbia is expected to be at least as good. Thanks for watching. While you're still here, click the link on your screen to check out more videos. See you there.